In 1999, 23 students boarded a yellow school bus for their final trip together. They vanished without a trace. No bodies, no clues. Just silence for 4 years. Until a fisherman made a discovery that shocked the entire town. What happened to the class of 1999? The truth behind their disappearance was more complex than anyone imagined. The morning mist clung to Thunder Bay like a funeral shroud as Dr. Sarah Chen sat at her kitchen table, still wearing scrubs from her night shift at the regional hospital. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she hadn't touched it anyway. Her eyes were fixed on the framed photograph beside her empty mug. Amy at 17, graduation cap slightly crooked, that brilliant smile that could light up any room. 4 years. The thought hit her the same way it did every morning, like a weight settling in her chest. 4 years since her daughter had climbed onto that yellow school bus with 22 other seniors from Maple Ridge High School, headed for their graduation trip to Algonquin Park. 4 years since they'd all vanished without a trace, as if they had simply disappeared into thin air. The phone's shrill ring shattered the morning silence. Sarah startled, nearly knocking over the untouched coffee as she reached for the receiver. The caller ID showed a number she recognized, one that had been part of her life for years. "Hello? Dr. Chen? This is Detective Murphy, OPP. I need you to come to Blackwater Lake immediately." Detective James Murphy's voice was gravelly from too many cigarettes and too little sleep, but there was something different in his tone today, something that made Sarah's heart race. "What is it? Did you find something?" 4 years of waiting, 4 years of false leads and dead ends. She'd learned not to get her hopes up, but the urgency in her voice betrayed her. "We found the bus, Sarah. A fisherman discovered it this morning using his sonar equipment while fishing. We found Maple Ridge High's graduation bus." The photograph slipped from Sarah's other hand, glass shattering against the kitchen tiles. Amy's smiling face disappeared behind a spiderweb of cracks. "The students, are they—" "The bus is empty. But Sarah, you need to see this. There's something we need to understand." The drive to Blackwater Lake took 47 minutes through winding country roads that Sarah had traveled countless times during the search efforts. She had spent weekends for the first 2 years joining volunteer search parties, coordinating with local authorities, looking for any sign that her daughter had been in these woods. Now they'd found the bus. Empty. But what did that mean for the investigation? Police tape fluttered in the cold March wind when Sarah arrived at the lake. The normally pristine water was churned up by dive boats and recovery equipment, its surface broken by the coordination of multiple law enforcement agencies. She parked her aging Honda Civic beside a row of other cars. She recognized most of them. The families. They were all here. Detective Murphy approached as she climbed out of her car. Mid-50s with a weathered face that had seen too many unsolved cases, he'd been the lead investigator on Amy's disappearance from day one. His partner, Detective Lisa Wong, followed close behind, younger but with the same determined expression that came from working cold cases. "Sarah, thank you for coming." "How long has it been down there?" Sarah asked, scanning the lake's surface for any sign of the bus. "Based on the condition of the vehicle, our dive team estimates it's been submerged since shortly after the disappearance. 4 years, give or take." As other families gathered near the shoreline, Detective Murphy gestured toward a weathered man in his 60s standing beside a small fishing boat. "I'd like you all to meet Frank Kowalski. He's the fisherman who discovered the bus this morning." Sarah recognized the surname immediately. "Any relation to Margaret Kowalski?" "David's grandfather," Margaret said, approaching with tears in her eyes. "Dad's been fishing this lake for 40 years. Frank stepped forward, his calloused hands fidgeting with a worn baseball cap. "I was out early this morning, around 5 a.m., checking my usual spots with the fish finder. That's when the sonar picked up something big on the bottom, right about where the lake drops off into the deep section." "What made you think it might be the bus?" Detective Wong asked. Frank's weathered face grew serious. "Well, it was the right size and shape. Been fishing this lake since I was a boy, and I know every rock, every fallen tree down there. This was something that didn't belong. When I saw the outline on my sonar screen, it looked like a vehicle." Sarah stepped closer. "Mr. Kowalski, did you suspect it might be connected to the missing students?" "Dr. Chen," Frank said quietly, "I've been searching for that bus in my own way for 4 years. Every time I came out here, part of me was hoping and part of me was dreading I might find something. When I saw it on the screen this morning, I knew immediately I had to call the police." A commotion near the water's edge drew their attention. The school bus was being winched up by a massive crane, water cascading from its yellow hull like metallic tears. Other families had gathered along the shoreline, some holding each other for support, others standing alone in their private vigils. Sarah recognized Margaret Kowalski, whose son David had been Amy's best friend since kindergarten. Tom and Linda Harrison, whose daughter Jessica had been valedictorian. The Donnellys, the Patels, the McKinnons, all united by the same unanswered questions, each carrying their own way of hoping. 4 years, Sarah, Margaret said, taking her father's arm for support. 4 years we've been waiting for answers. Sarah took Margaret's hand, feeling how cold and small it was in her own. They'd grown close in the months after the disappearance, supporting each other through the uncertainty. But as time passed and leads grew cold, they'd naturally drifted apart. It was difficult to maintain hope when reflected in someone else's experience. "At least now we have a new direction for the investigation," Sarah said quietly. "It's progress. But where are our children?" Tom Harrison's voice carried the weight of years of questions. "If the bus has been here all along, where are Amy and Jessica and David and all the rest?" Detective Wong stepped forward. "We're treating this as an active missing persons case with potential criminal elements. The fact that the bus is empty suggests that whatever happened to your children, it wasn't a simple accident." The words hit Sarah like cold water. She'd always suspected, deep down, that 23 teenagers didn't just vanish without explanation. But hearing it confirmed by law enforcement made it real in a way that 4 years of speculation hadn't. The crane operator called out, and they all turned to watch as the bus broke the surface completely. Water poured from its open windows and emergency exits, and Sarah could see that many of the seats had been removed entirely. But there, on the driver's seat, something caught the morning sunlight. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Detective Murphy squinted. "We'll know in a minute. Let's get this secured on dry land." 20 minutes later, the bus sat dripping on the rocky shore like some mechanical artifact. The forensics team moved in immediately, photographing everything before anyone else could examine the scene. Sarah watched through the crime scene tape as they worked, her medical training making her notice details that others might miss. The seats that remained were arranged strategically, pushed toward the back of the bus as if to create space for something specific. The floor showed signs of having been thoroughly cleaned, though 4 years underwater had obscured most potential evidence. And there, on the dashboard, where the driver would sit, was what had caught the sunlight. Detective Murphy emerged from the bus holding an evidence bag. Inside was a necklace, unusual in design, with a pendant that showed an intricate symbol Sarah didn't recognize. It looked like a combination of geometric shapes and what might have been letters from an unfamiliar writing system. "Any of you recognize this?" Murphy asked, showing the bag to the assembled families. Sarah studied the pendant carefully. It was clearly handmade, crafted from what looked like silver with small stones embedded in the design. The symbol was etched with precise detail, as if it held some important significance. "I've never seen anything like it," Margaret said, echoing the murmurs from the other families. "What about Amy?" Detective Wong asked Sarah directly. "Did she ever wear jewelry like this?" Sarah shook her head. "Amy wasn't particularly interested in jewelry. She had a simple gold chain I gave her for her 16th birthday, but nothing like this." "We'll run it through our databases, see if the symbol matches anything in our files," Murphy said. "But I want all of you to think carefully. This was left behind deliberately. Someone wanted us to find it." The implication hung in the air like a challenge. If someone had wanted them to find the necklace, it meant someone knew they'd eventually locate the bus, which meant someone had been waiting 4 years for this moment. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the March wind. "Detective Murphy," she said, "I'd like to get a photograph of that necklace, if that's possible." "For what purpose?" "I have contacts in the medical community, people who might recognize unusual symbols or designs.
Sometimes religious or cultural artifacts have connections we don't immediately see. Murphy considered for a moment, then nodded. I can have our crime scene photographer make you a copy. But Sarah, I need you to understand, this is an active investigation now. Anything you discover, you report to us immediately. Of course. As the other families began to disperse, reality setting in that their children were still missing despite this breakthrough, Sarah lingered by the water's edge. The lake had revealed one secret today. She wondered what others might be hidden beneath its surface. Her phone buzzed. A text message from the hospital. Sarah, can you cover Dr. Mitchell's shift tonight? Family emergency. She looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, yes, I'll be there at 8. Work would help her focus, and maybe, if she was fortunate, the copy of that photograph would be ready by the time her shift ended. The drive home took Sarah through the heart of Thunder Bay, past the jewelry store where she'd bought Amy's 16th birthday necklace. Without really planning to, she found herself pulling into the small parking lot beside Goldstein's fine jewelry. Morris Goldstein had been in business for 37 years, and Sarah had been a customer for most of Amy's life. He'd helped her select Amy's first pair of earrings when she turned 13, had sized various pieces over the years. The bell above the door chimed as Sarah entered. Morris looked up from behind his jeweler's loop, his weathered face creasing into a smile. Dr. Chen, I haven't seen you in, well, it's been quite some time. Hello, Morris. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out the photograph Detective Murphy had given her. She'd specifically requested a physical copy, something she could carry around without worrying about digital files or technology issues. I need to ask you about something unusual. Have you ever seen a necklace like this? Morris took the photograph and studied it carefully, adjusting his glasses. His expression grew increasingly puzzled as he examined the image. This is quite unique, he said finally. The craftsmanship appears professional, but I've never encountered this particular symbol before. The metalwork looks like silver, possibly hand-forged. But this design, he shook his head. Where did you encounter this? It's connected to Amy's case, the missing students. Morris's expression immediately grew serious. He'd known Amy since she was a child, had always asked about her when Sarah visited. He'd been one of the many local business owners who'd displayed missing person information 4 years ago. Sarah, I wish I could help you, but in all my years in this business, I've never seen anything like this symbol. It's not Celtic, not Norse, not any of the traditional designs people usually request. This looks more like what? Like it might have ceremonial or organizational significance, but not from any group I'm familiar with.
Sarah felt her hopes dim slightly, but she thanked Morris and headed for the door. Sarah, he called after her, try the antique shops. Sometimes unusual pieces like this come from estate collections or specialized sources, and I hope this leads to the answers you're looking for. The next 3 hours took Sarah to every jewelry store, antique shop, and pawn shop in Thunder Bay. The responses were all variations of the same theme. Unusual piece, skilled craftsmanship, never seen anything like it. By the time she arrived at the hospital for her shift, Sarah was no closer to understanding the necklace than she'd been that morning. She changed into fresh scrubs and tried to focus on her work. The emergency department required her complete attention. But as the night progressed, between treating various cases and consulting with colleagues, Sarah found herself thinking about symbols and mysteries, about buses at the bottom of lakes, and young people who'd vanished without explanation. It was just after 2 a.m. when the call came in. Trauma 1, incoming motor vehicle incident, the dispatcher announced over the intercom. Female, approximately 18 to 20 years old, found walking on Highway 61. Police are requesting immediate medical evaluation. Sarah prepared Trauma 1 and waited for the ambulance. When the paramedics brought in the stretcher, she got her first look at the patient. A young woman, clearly malnourished, with long dark hair and pale skin. She was conscious but appeared disoriented. "What do we know about her?" Sarah asked as they transferred the woman to the hospital bed. Officer Bennett found her walking along the highway around 1:30 a.m., the paramedic reported, appeared confused, possibly suffering from exposure. No identification, no personal belongings. As Sarah began her examination, checking vital signs and looking for obvious injuries, something caught her eye. Around the woman's neck, partially hidden by her hair, was a necklace,
Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The pendant was identical to the one they'd found in the bus that morning. The same intricate symbol, the same handcrafted silverwork, the same mysterious design. "Get me Detective Murphy on the phone," she told the nurse, "right now." While she waited for the call to go through, Sarah continued her examination. The young woman was severely dehydrated and underweight, suggesting she'd been in an isolated location with limited resources. There were marks on her wrists and ankles, faded but visible, indicating she'd been restrained for an extended period. But most telling of all were small, precise marks on her arms and legs. They appeared to be intentionally made, possibly as part of some kind of systematic process. Sarah had seen similar markings in medical literature. They were consistent with controlled environments, possibly connected to organized groups or institutions. The phone rang. "Murphy. Detective, it's Sarah Chen. I'm at the hospital, and we have a young woman here who was found on Highway 61. She's wearing the same type of necklace we discovered in the bus." There was a pause. "Are you certain?" "Identical. Same symbol, same craftsmanship. But detective, there's more. This woman shows signs of having been held in isolation for an extended period. I think she might be connected to what happened to our students. I'm on my way. Don't let anyone else examine that necklace, and keep the woman under observation." Sarah hung up and looked at the young woman on the bed. Who was she? Where had she been for the past several years? And most importantly, did she have information about Amy and the other missing students? The woman's eyes focused on Sarah just as Detective Murphy arrived. They were remarkably clear blue, but filled with a wariness that seemed deeply ingrained. Where am I?" the woman asked quietly. "You're safe," Sarah said gently. "You're in the hospital. My name is Dr. Chen." The woman's eyes moved around the room, taking in the medical equipment, the sterile white walls, Detective Murphy's uniform. Her breathing began to quicken slightly. "The others," she said suddenly, trying to sit up. "I need to tell you about the others." Detective Murphy stepped forward. "What others? What's your name?" The woman looked at him with those remarkably clear eyes. "My name is Rebecca Morrison. I was on the bus, the graduation bus from Maple Midge High School." Sarah felt the world shift. Rebecca Morrison had been one of the missing students, a quiet young woman who'd planned to study art therapy in college. Sarah remembered her from the community vigils, from the missing person materials. "Rebecca," Sarah said softly, "where have you been? Where are the other students?" Rebecca's hand went to the necklace at her throat, and for the first time, genuine fear showed in her eyes. "The group," she whispered. "They call themselves the Shepherds of the New Dawn. They took us. They've been keeping us at their compound." "Keeping you where?" Murphy asked. Rebecca looked directly at Sarah, and in that moment, Sarah saw something that concerned her deeply. The young woman wasn't just afraid. She seemed to be carrying some kind of burden, as if she'd witnessed something terrible and couldn't process it. "There's a ceremony," Rebecca said. "It happens every 7 years. They believe they need 23 people for their ritual. We were chosen for their purposes." "What kind of ceremony?" Murphy pressed carefully. "I escaped. 3 days ago, I finally managed to get away. But the others," Rebecca's voice broke. "Dr. Chen, the others are still there, and the ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow night." Sarah felt her heart race. "Amy? Is Amy still with them?" Rebecca nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "She's there. They consider her important to their plans. She'll be in the most danger unless we can locate them." Detective Murphy was already on his radio, coordinating with other units, requesting search teams, mobilizing every resource the OP had available. But Sarah barely heard him. All she could think about was Amy, somewhere out there after 4 years, waiting to be found.
"Where are they?" Sarah asked urgently. "Rebecca, where are the shepherds keeping everyone?" "There's a compound," Rebecca said, her voice gaining strength as the medical treatment took effect. "It's way up north of here, past several lakes I don't know the names of. It took hours to drive there when they first brought us. The compound is hidden in dense forest, surrounded by tall fencing. The shepherds had been planning this operation for years." "How many of them are there?" Murphy asked. "Maybe 20 adults. But detective, they're not just random people. Some of them are from the community, people you'd recognize, people in positions of trust." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Rebecca looked at her with those haunting blue eyes. Dr. Chen, one of the shepherds, one of their leaders. There was a doctor who sometimes came to check on us when people got sick. I don't know his name, but he mentioned working at a hospital in Thunder Bay. The next 6 hours blurred together in intense activity. Detective Murphy coordinated with tactical teams, while Sarah worked with Rebecca to gather more information about the compound's layout and security. Rebecca drew maps from memory, describing guard rotations and the locations where the other students were being held. Through careful questioning and cross-referencing with hospital records, investigators were able to identify the doctor Rebecca had described. When they attempted to contact Dr. Richard Mitchell, they discovered his house was empty. His neighbors reported seeing him loading a vehicle late the previous night. "He knows," Murphy said grimly. "He knows Rebecca escaped, and he's probably alerting the others right now." But the most shocking revelation came when Sarah realized she had just covered Dr. Mitchell's shift the night before. The colleague she had worked alongside for 3 years, had trusted with patients, had considered reliable. He had been part of the organization that took her daughter.
The tactical team mobilized at dawn, racing toward the coordinates Rebecca had provided with the help of GPS mapping and aerial reconnaissance. Sarah wanted to accompany them, but Murphy insisted she remain with Rebecca at the hospital, both for the young woman's protection and because she might remember additional details that could assist with the operation. As the hours passed, Sarah found herself pacing the hospital corridors, checking her phone every few minutes for updates. Margaret Kowalski had arrived after hearing the news, along with several other families. They gathered in the waiting area like they had so many times during the initial search efforts, hoping for positive news but prepared for any outcome. At 3:47 p.m., Murphy's call finally came. "Sarah, we found the compound. We found them." Sarah's knees nearly gave out. "Are they safe? Is Amy?" 21 students are alive and in stable condition. They're being transported to hospitals in Thunder Bay and Sudbury for medical evaluation. Mr. Peterson, the bus driver, and Mrs. Matthews, their teacher chaperone, are also safe. 21? Sarah's heart sank. Who didn't? Tommy Morrison, Rebecca's brother. Appears he was injured trying to help her escape 3 days ago. But Sarah, Amy is okay. She's asking for you. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling 4 years of uncertainty and fear finally begin to lift from her shoulders. Her daughter was alive. After everything, Amy was coming home. "What about Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Matthews?" Sarah asked, thinking of the 58-year-old bus driver who had driven school trips for 15 years, and the beloved English teacher who had volunteered to chaperone. "They're both physically unharmed, but emotionally traumatized," Murphy explained. According to initial interviews, they were kept separate from the students, but were told that if they tried to escape or contact anyone, the students would be harmed. They stayed to protect the kids as much as they could. "Detective," Sarah said, "what about the bus? How did it end up at the bottom of the lake? And the necklace?" Murphy's voice grew heavy. "We captured one of the shepherd leaders during the raid, a man named Vincent Thorne. He's been with the group for over a decade. During interrogation, he revealed their plan from the beginning." "What plan?" "The shepherds targeted the graduation trip specifically because they needed exactly 23 people for their ceremony. They believed this number held mystical significance in their twisted ideology. They'd been planning the abduction for months, using Dr. Mitchell to gather information about the community and identify the perfect targets." Sarah felt sick. But the bus? According to Thorne, the original plan was to make it look like an accident. They intercepted the bus on a remote stretch of highway, claiming there was an emergency that required immediate medical attention. When Mr. Peterson stopped to help, they overpowered him and Mrs. Matthews. Then what happened? They forced Peterson to drive the bus to a secluded area near Blackwater Lake. The plan was to stage the bus going into the water, making it appear as if Peterson had lost control during bad weather. They wanted everyone to believe the students had drowned, so no one would keep looking for them. Sarah's hands trembled. How did Harold manage to leave the necklace? That's where Peterson showed incredible courage, Murphy continued. When they ordered him to drive the bus toward the lake, he realized what they intended. He fought back, trying to prevent them from drowning the evidence. During the struggle with Thorne, he managed to grab the man's necklace, the symbol of his leadership in the group, and rip it from his neck. Thorne didn't notice? In the chaos, no. Peterson was beaten unconscious during the fight, but not before he had hidden the necklace on the driver's seat. When he came to, Thorne was directing other shepherds to rig the bus to roll into the lake on its own. Sarah's heart ached for the brave man who had risked everything to protect her daughter and the other students. He left it there, hoping someone would find it? Exactly. Peterson knew that if the bus was ever recovered, that necklace would be evidence of foul play. He hoped it would lead investigators to the truth about what really happened. What about the students? How did they survive the bus going into the lake? They were never in the bus when it went into the lake, Murphy explained. The shepherds had already removed all the students and transported them to the compound in separate vehicles. The bus was just meant to be a decoy, evidence of a tragic accident that would stop people from searching for survivors. But why? Sarah asked. What did they want with the students? Murphy's voice darkened. According to Thorne, the shepherds believed they were creating a new generation of followers. They saw the graduation class as young adults who could be molded into their ideology. The ceremony scheduled for tomorrow night was meant to be their final initiation, a psychological process that would make them permanent members of the group. Psychological manipulation? Isolation, indoctrination, dependency. Classic cult tactics. They kept the students in controlled conditions, gradually breaking down their resistance and rebuilding their identity around the group's beliefs. The ceremony was the final step. After 4 years of preparation, they believed the students would willingly commit to staying with the shepherds permanently. And if they refused? Thorne wouldn't say. But based on what we found at the compound, we don't think refusal was considered an option. But that afternoon, as Sarah drove to meet the medical transport bringing Amy home, she reflected on Harold Peterson's courage. A man who had spent 15 years safely transporting children to and from school trips, who had faced the worst situation imaginable and still found a way to leave a clue for investigators. The drive seemed both endless and too short. I wanted to see Amy immediately, but I also needed time to prepare myself for whatever changes 4 years of captivity might have brought. As Sarah pulled into the hospital parking lot and saw the ambulance waiting, she reflected on time, how it could stretch endlessly when you were searching for answers, and how it could compress into a single moment when those answers finally arrived. 4 years of investigation, 4 years of hoping, 4 years of refusing to give up. And now, finally, it was time to bring her daughter home. The ambulance doors opened, and Sarah saw Amy for the first time in 4 years. Thinner than she remembered, older in ways that went beyond the passage of time, but alive, beautifully, miraculously alive. "Mom?" Amy's voice was uncertain, as if she couldn't quite believe this moment was real. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here, and we're going to get through this together." As the medical team transported Amy into the hospital, Sarah caught her reflection in the glass doors. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who'd answered the phone that morning. 4 years older, certainly, but also somehow renewed. The investigation would continue for months, eventually uncovering a network of similar groups across Canada and the northern United States. Vincent Thorne was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dr. Mitchell was eventually located attempting to cross the border into Mexico and was extradited to face charges of kidnapping and conspiracy. Bus driver Harold Peterson was recognized as a hero by the community and the families of the rescued students. Despite the trauma he had endured, his quick thinking and courage had provided the crucial evidence that led to their rescue. He received commendations from law enforcement agencies and was honored at a special ceremony attended by all the families. Teacher Susan Matthews, who had spent 4 years trying to maintain hope among the students and protect them from the worst of the Shepherd's psychological manipulation, was also honored for her bravery. She had used her teaching skills to conduct informal education sessions, helping the students maintain their identities and critical thinking abilities despite the isolation. The Shepherds of the New Dawn had been operating for years, possibly decades, and authorities discovered evidence of other missing persons cases that might be connected to their activities. The investigation revealed similar compounds in remote areas of 3 other provinces, leading to additional arrests and the rescue of more victims. The investigation revealed that the Shepherds had specifically targeted the graduation trip because they needed exactly 23 people for their ritual, believing this number held mystical significance. They had spent months planning the abduction, with Dr. Mitchell providing inside information about the community and families. The mystery of the necklace had been solved, a symbol of leadership within the cult that had become the key to their downfall. Harold Peterson's courage in grabbing it during his struggle with Vincent Thorne had provided the crucial clue that led investigators to the truth. Because, Sarah realized, the most complex mysteries have the most meaningful resolutions. Sometimes the missing do come home. And sometimes hope and determination are enough to light the way through even the longest investigations. She thought about the necklace that had started the breakthrough, the symbol that had seemed so mysterious that morning. What the Shepherds had intended as a mark of their authority had ultimately become the evidence that exposed their crimes. How appropriate, then, that it had ultimately led to their discovery. The very symbol they'd used to identify their leadership had become the key to their capture. The class of 1999 was finally accounted for. 22 of them, anyway, plus their brave bus driver and teacher who had sacrificed their own freedom to protect their students. And that, Sarah thought as she followed her daughter into the hospital, was more than she had dared to hope for 4 years ago. The investigation would continue, but the most important question had been answered. They were home.